Metroid Prime 4 to me is Nintendo Switch's biggest question mark. Sure, the franchise has plenty of die-hard fans, but its commercial performance doesn't exactly translate that into any notable success. I want to talk about how Metroid Prime 4 could maybe go about changing that, or at the very least make the commercial success a bit less important. I've been wanting to talk to you guys about Metroid Prime for a while, but haven't been given a good enough reason to do so. That said, the Game Awards are happening later tonight, and given that showrunner Geoff Keighley and Nintendo have been hinting at some sort of Nintendo announcement coming to the show, possibly even a few. Nintendo's past announcements there have varied from being a huge crowd pleaser like the first real look at what we now know as the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, or showing us Donkey Kong Country. Look, I like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze as much as the next guy, but keep retro free for new ideas. But that's a different topic for a different video for a different day. The Game Awards this year, for the sake of the discussion, I want to predict that we'll get a Breath of the Wild style reveal this year. And what better game to do that with than Metroid Prime 4? Well, Pokemon, but that's beside the point. Metroid has a lot of hype behind it, as evidenced by the fact that a basic animated logo sequence has well over 2 million views. That's within striking distance of games like Yoshi for Switch and Kirby Star Allies. By no means am I saying that that means this game will automatically blow Metroid's typical lukewarm performance out of the water. I do, however, think that if Nintendo plays their cards right, it could be a start. Those other two games were pretty much fully revealed in those trailers. I think that could contribute to those games having a tepid response for that audience if they were to be showcased at the Game Awards. Also, we're used to seeing games that skew towards the sensibilities of gamers that get excited for games like The Last of Us, Death Stranding, and No Man's Sky. So even a Fire Emblem reveal, I think, may fall on deaf ears. The full reveal of Metroid Prime 4 being at the Game Awards would be the perfect way to turn Metroid into the franchise it no doubt has the potential to be. There will be thousands of hardcore gamers who generally are averse to Nintendo's all-inclusive strategy. Metroid is an outlier in that. Of course, Metroid will likely never be a rated M gruesome game or otherwise adult game in the way a God of War or even Halo is, but it's the closest thing Nintendo has. At the risk of the obligatory commenter who will likely say something along the lines of, "So you just want Metroid to be like Halo?" No, that's not what I said, so it's not what I want. I just think that Metroid Prime 4 has the potential to expand Metroid's player base if Nintendo plays ball in the blockbuster action shooter genre. And to do that, they need to do a few new things. Take the core of Metroid, the level design structure, the interesting mechanics and abilities, the isolated woman against space wild dynamic, the fantastical alien monster boss battles, and adapt that to the current AAA expectation with a Nintendo touch. You know, the Breath of the Wild of Metroidvanias, as it were. Which I know is a desire bordering on overused before games even have a chance to borrow from Breath of the Wild, but I believe it could do for Metroid what Breath of the Wild did for Zelda. Zelda was never a major hit in the sales department, just like Metroid, but to a lesser degree. And Breath of the Wild broke that mold because it was more than a run-of-the-mill Zelda, to most misguided fans' dismay. I think if Prime 4 changes enough and adapts, it can too. A game that sticks stubbornly to its roots will only attract current fans. For Metroid to matter to the masses, and as a result be a franchise that doesn't go on a 10-year-long hiatus, it's going to need to adapt to more people's sensibilities. Some completely new, some known to the series past, and some things somewhere in the middle. First and foremost, I think Prime 4 should be a graphical showpiece that puts what Switch can do on a technical level to the test. That's a big thing the Prime series was known for on the original platform, GameCube. Many, including myself, would argue that the first two Prime games went toe-to-toe with Xbox's golden child, Halo. Don't take this as me saying this game should look as good or better than Halo 5. That's not possible. GameCube was a lot closer in power to the original Xbox than Switch is to Xbox One, and obviously Xbox One X. What I am saying is that the technical ability isn't the end-all be-all for visuals. If anything, technical prowess alone dooms most games that people once gushed over to looking gross a generation or two later. Metroid Prime 4 needs to excel in its art direction if it wants to stand out in the Space Marine heavy shooter AAA action game arena. Nintendo is usually good with this sort of thing, so I think this is more of a foregone conclusion than speculation and hope. If it's the big holiday game we all think Nintendo is going to bill it as, we can count on a larger than life art style that'll stand shoulder to to shoulder with whatever generic shooters we get from other studios. Next, presenting a plot that's impressive to today's gamers wouldn't hurt either, which, let's be honest, isn't really that hard. Today's masterpiece game stories are 5 years ago's so-so movie, or even book if you look back far enough. And that's not hate. The Last of Us is great. I bought it twice. All I'm saying is you don't need to be Christopher Nolan or James Cameron to make a story that will grab gamers. It just needs to be good enough to want to engage with, and obviously for Nintendo, facilitate the gameplay. Stakes that people care about, a more believable, less robotic Samus than other M-Hag, supporting characters that don't make you want to cause them bodily harm, and maybe some genuinely unsettling or even frightening antagonists. Just an idea. I think the concept of Samus Aran, a lone bounty hunter on an unknown planet somewhere in the galaxy fighting to save some species like Metroids, Chozo, or protect the entire galaxy from the likes of space pirates, and a teched out, ever-evolving power suit can be compelling for more people than just the diehards, and just needs to be something that the dev team dedicates resources to improving. And that's coming from me, a guy that generally could care less about why I'm saving the princess or breaking into the secret base or whatever. I think the tone of the story should be a bit darker to further separate it from the current games for kids reputation a lot of Nintendo franchises have. Metroid is the perfect series to steer into that skid. It's a natural transition in my opinion. It's already the most photorealistic series they have in the franchise with the most modern Western influence, short of Breath of the Wild of course. It's a bit of a cliche at this point for everyone to be screaming that they want their favorite franchises to have gritty reboots, as it were. This isn't that. Metroid already toes that line. I just want them to go a little further. Like I said, no M rating, just a harder T. Obviously, it being Prime 4 means it'll continue from where Prime 3 left off. I couldn't tell you where that is. I paid very little attention to that at the time. Also, you know, it was like a decade ago and all of that. I think a Metroid game with a contemporary story could attract a wider set of players, maybe even make me personally care more for the story. That doesn't need to be done in a way that waters down the story, quite the opposite. I want it to be an even bigger focus. As I've been stressing so far, Metroid already deviates from the Nintendo mold in many ways. I think being the Nintendo series that tells grander stories that can compete with the likes of Naughty Dog or BioWare could be another push in the right direction. And this is the part of the video where I address the potential comments from people that don't understand what job openings are. I get it, Nintendo doesn't have a team known for that sort of thing. However, not currently having the staff to do such a thing will not stop this from happening. Nintendo is a company with lots of clout and could attract whatever talent they need to. This would just need to be something they deem to be an important asset and seek it out. If Guerrilla could make the transition from being the Killzone dev to creating something like Horizon Zero Dawn, Nintendo, or Bandai Namco, if rumors are true, can do the same. This will no doubt attract new players to the game. They'll need to frame the story in a way that is easy for newcomers to get caught up on, or players of the past games to get caught up again, because once again, the last entry in this franchise came out 10 years ago. And for those that do remember, it'll simultaneously make it better for them, not unlike Uncharted 4. That being said, the last aspect they need to nail with Prime 4, in my opinion, and they already have all the talent they need and more, is the gameplay. When people think doing the Breath of the Wild of insert franchise here, they think open world. I don't think the bulk of what made Breath of the Wild great was the fast open world. It's a trend to try to make every AAA single player game open world, but I would say that the open worlds feel forced 80% of the time. I don't think making Prime 4 open world would be any different. The world in Breath of the Wild just fit Zelda best. I don't think that's true for Metroid. In fact, open world would take the Metroidvania out of Metroid. A world without direction or without a manageable scope would rob an entire genre. Not how we're used to experiencing a genre, but the point of the genre. It's not like what people said about Pokemon with changes would do. What makes Pokemon isn't its largely unchanged battle system, it's the world building and the sense of adventure. What makes Metroid is the looping world design. Metroid Prime 4's world needs to be contained, deep, and deliberate, because we'll be expected to loop around this world several times. Making it too big or too shallow can make that world traversal a chore. Think Dark Souls or Bloodborne style world design, not so much Fallout or Witcher. The worlds of the former games are decent sizes, but not big to the point of being overwhelming or unnecessary. The combat can go largely unchanged, other than the trademark new power suit mechanic that usually is introduced in new Prime games. I think making it feel tighter or maybe even introducing some chemistry or physics goodness a la Breath of the Wild, while also making great gunplay a priority. And I don't think they need to pull a Naughty Dog and add a forgettable multiplayer. Minus The Last of Us. That mode was fun while it lasted, and it even made some sense. For Metroid though, I think the isolation is important. And if they do what I think they should for the story, Samus is important. Having a bunch of nondescript Samuses running around and shooting other color swap Samuses or even generic bounty hunters would be pointless and forced for the sake of longevity. I wouldn't be outright against a multiplayer mode. It's a standard of this genre on other platforms after all. I just don't think it would add enough to the experience to justify the additional needed assets, so it shouldn't be there. The Game Awards are mere hours away from the time of release for this video. Whether or not we'll end up seeing or have seen Prime 4 there, or if we'll have to wait until some point in 2018 is up in the air, but I hope we do, and I hope we'll see at least some of the things I talked about here. If we do, I believe Prime 4 would be equipped with enough to make a strong case for more gamers to jump into the series. Maybe even Nintendo Switch as a platform. It'll make Metroid a poster child for a different facet of Nintendo, a new facet of Nintendo. But those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you think Metroid Prime could do better if it made big changes? Is Switch's success enough? Or do you think it'll fail regardless? Let me know in the comments, or even more directly in our Discord, linked in the description. Don't forget to tell a friend, subscribe if you haven't already, click the bell to be notified of new videos we release here every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Maybe watch one of the videos linked on the screen. Your call. Okay, that's it for me. See you next week.